And you may know last week Jay Clayton was interviewed on CNBC and started talking about the need for Bitcoin regulation. And it's clear that the SEC under Jay Clayton took a very anti-crypto point of view, which I don't think is good for the whole industry, particularly for those actors who have, I think, sought to work with regulators constructively and transparently.
I want to note, you mentioned Mary Jo White. She is on the payroll of Ripple, right? She's on the board. Is that right?
No, she's not on the board. We have a robust board of many of our former regulators, government people. But Mary Jo White is our outside counsel. But I think it says a lot the fact that Mary Jo White, as the former chair of the SEC, takes clients. She can get a lot of different clients, and the fact that she took this case, I think, is indicative of how she thinks about the law on this and how she thinks about the facts.
So you've described this as an attack on the crypto industry at large. You've said that there are ripple effects that are going to ripple out and cause maybe a chilling effect on the broader industry. Elaborate on that for us here. What does that mean? What damage will this lawsuit do to crypto at large?
Well, I think ultimately it won't do that damage because I think that, as we have already seen, I think that the trend line has been positive for the court case, and so I don't think it will do the damage. I think Ripple's likely to prevail. In fact, my own personal point of view is that as a new leadership team at the SEC comes in, there'll be an opportunity to have a constructive dialogue about how do we move forward in context of where the industry is today. I think well, XRP as one of the cryptocurrencies that has a lot of liquidity, has traded openly for about 8 years. Over $1 trillion of XRP has traded for different currencies around the world. And other parts of the U.S. government have referred to XRP as a currency. In fact, it's an interesting nugget that the United States is the only country on the planet that has suggested XRP is a currency. That XRP is a security. You have other G20 markets, whether it's the UK, whether it's Switzerland, Japan, Singapore, parts of the Middle East. They have all been very explicit that they view XRP as a currency. And so, look, I think we will get to resolution around this. I'm hopeful that we get to that sooner rather than later. But if we do have to go all the way to a neutral fact finder having judge make a determination, I'm very optimistic about how that will play out.
You're optimistic. You mentioned that things have been going well recently in terms of proceedings of the lawsuit. But it makes me wonder, what happens to Ripple, what happens to XRP if it does not go in your favor?
Well, look, and I talked about this a little bit when the lawsuit was first filed. Ripple today is already a very global company. Well over 90% of our customers are non-U.S. customers. At the time the SEC filed the lawsuit, 95% of XRP liquidity, XRP trading happened outside the United States. Today, obviously, it's closer to 100% of XRP trading happens outside the United States. Although I will point out that because the SEC has not been clear, there are players like Uphold here in the United States who can still buy and sell XRP. So the point being that regardless where the SEC ends up, which again I'm quite confident about, but look, Ripple's a very global company, and we serve the vast majority of the activity across RippleNet, our payments network, is non-U.S. activity. I'll also point out that even since the SEC has filed their lawsuit, we have signed over 20 new contracts with financial institutions around the world. So now I will point out none of those have been here in the United States. And I think ultimately that's why I go back to this is an attack on crypto here in the United States. There are lots of players in the crypto industry who have chosen to set up a domicile outside the United States. And I think one of the worst things that can happen, and I say this as a U.S. citizen and being based here in the United States, is this isn't good for the crypto industry here domestically. You and I both probably remember the earliest days of the internet. Having clear regulatory dynamics allowed investment, allowed entrepreneurs to come in, and really the internet in the earliest days was born here in the United States, partly because of that certainty and that clarity. The fact that the United States SEC took steps to drive this activity, this innovation outside the United States, I think is counterproductive.
So since the lawsuit, you mentioned that your clients have moved even more global. I mean, you were heavily international beforehand, but now you're even more so as a result of this. Where are you seeing the biggest uptick? Where are you signing deals in the world?
Well, two markets that I'll highlight. One, Southeast Asia has always been a very strong market for us, where the friction associated with cross-border payments has been high. You have a lot of cross-border activity, and so Southeast Asia has been a strong market for us. At one point, I think about 40% of the activity across the RippleNet network, which, as we've talked publicly about, is now in billions of dollars in transactions. Another market is the Middle East and North Africa, which also has, whether you're talking about Saudi Arabia, and it was a corridor into India, you have lots of migrant workers. At the end of the day, Ripple has been very focused on making sure we're solving a real problem for real customers. And migrant workers is clearly, and remittances is clearly a very high friction and expensive payment mechanism. And so partnering with our customers, we're able to make that much more efficient.
So if the U.S., in your opinion, is not pursuing crypto the right way from a regulatory perspective, where in the world is? Is there anywhere that is the sort of leading light, the shining beacon of having figured this regulatory situation out? Where would you point?
Well, the first thing I'll say is any country that has provided clarity and certainty is ahead of the United States. The lack, there's a Department of Justice report, came out, I think it was like end of Q3, maybe early Q4 last year, and it referenced 8 different jurisdictional interests in crypto. So here in the United States, you got a lot of different trying to figure it out. The UK certainly has been a leader here with their Token Taxonomy Act. Certainly Singapore has been a leader. The MAS, their financial regulator. Japan, without a doubt, has been a leader. And I'd also highlight Switzerland. All, pretty major economies that have provided clarity and certainty that has allowed entrepreneurs, that have allowed investors to come in and invest in these assets and build new companies to solve problems for customers.
So we're a few months into the new administration now. Since Biden has taken over, we've had a few new appointments across the board. You mentioned that Clayton's on his way out at the SEC, and we have someone new, Gary Gensler, who actually a lot of cryptocurrency industry insiders look to as somebody who's quite knowledgeable and knows this space pretty well. What is your impression of him and of how he's going to steer the ship at the SEC?
Look, I think Gary Gensler is very knowledgeable about blockchain technologies, about digital assets, and so I think in that context, I'm actually very confident. Anytime you're working with someone, to the extent they have knowledge, to the extent they have awareness, that you can have a constructive conversation about the nuances that do exist in this industry. That was very difficult in Jay Clayton's SEC, and so I think I'm optimistic about his leadership and as he brings in his new team.
Is there anything you want to see pass? Any bills related to digital currency to clarify, what's going on? Is there anything that's bubbled up that you think is good and should be approved?
Well, again, I'll start with clarity and certainty is good, and part of the irony here is the SEC bringing a lawsuit saying, "Hey, we should have known all along that XRP is a security," when in fact they haven't known all along that XRP is a security. But look, I think one of the pieces of legislation introduced in the last session of Congress was called the DCEA, the Digital Commodity Exchange Act. And the point of the DCEA was to provide that clarity and certainty from a legislative point of view. Using enforcement, the SEC using enforcement to try to rule make, that's not really how the SEC was supposed to set up to make rules. There is a rulemaking process where they will put proposals forward and have the community comment, which I think is a much more constructive way to approach that. But that's the one that I would highlight that was introduced the last legislative session. And I'm hopeful, again, that as legislative bodies understand these technologies and how the United States SEC is actually pushing innovation outside the United States, that you'll see action to address that.
So I'd like to get at something a little bit more existential about Ripple and about XRP. XRP was created sort of before there was this proliferation of stable coins, of cryptocurrencies that are intended to be non-volatile, to be used as a mechanism for payments, and also kind of before this boom in central bank digital currencies got really hot. What is the place for XRP in a world where you have these other assets that are able to, sort of seamlessly do fast, quick, cheap transactions across borders.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. I think the way Ripple uses XRP is as a bridge currency, and whether you have a digital fiat, whether it's a tokenized, as some countries are investigating, or you don't have it tokenized, you still have that friction between currencies. So from my point of view, it's actually great to see central banks around the world investing in this space, and the more efficient the local rails are, the more demand there will be to have efficient cross-border rails. So I look at this as a very positive development. I've spoken publicly about some of the work that Ripple is doing in partnering with, in some cases consulting with central banks around the world to help them think through. And look, the XRP ledger is an extremely efficient ledger, and the ability to issue new assets and new tokens, if you will, on the XRP ledger is very straightforward. That was part of the original design. So I feel very good about where the world's going in that regard. I think it actually helps Ripple's business and how we're using the XRP ledger.
So in this sort of worldview that you're pitching, would it be that you have, say a U.S. digital dollar at some point, you've got a digital renminbi, and then XRP would sort of act as that bridge that people would swap into to go into those patchwork of different central bank digital currencies? Or maybe you could just zero in on that.
Yeah, look, if you think about it, whether or not a central bank is a tokenized digital asset or it is a currency, you still have the need to have liquidity and settlement between other currencies. So, but my viewpoint is when the central banks are experimenting with and in some cases moving forward deploying a central bank issued digital asset, I don't think it changes anything for how Ripple is going to market. In fact, I think in some ways it helps because, again, as I said, the more efficient your local rail is, the more demand there will be for efficient cross-border transactions. And managing that liquidity, today, you've got liquidity between 100 different currencies around the world. If you can have liquidity with one that then has that bridge to lots of currencies around the world, that can be managed much more efficiently. So I don't think it changes anything substantial. The other thing, by the way, I'll just point out, and I've talked about this a little bit publicly. I've always been a little bit curious about some